Hello, Connecticut news networks, including Fox Connecticut News, since before Judge Napolitano was no longer with them. And Whiting Forensics has collusion slash S also with the FBI, with wire crime action methods, with digital crime action methods, and with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with Wethersfield police, with a whole bunch of other countries. There are Afghan leaders of kids and kids involved intercities with them, with predicate acts and wire crime action methods, and with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, even if they are disguised as that, and rolls with that, with people tied to a Fred Grouzet and others from other areas who came on my street to make confessions regarding this. And they brought up a principal child abuser's campus to me before that was proven. They have a principal, they have retired Wethersfield police chiefs and their families and intimate ties, and a bunch of people tied to them have collusions with proven child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart. And their rules with their own kids into branch of foreign at the same time, with layers of other for originally and still. Here and there, everyone's sickly, distinctly hurt to keep how sickly, non-distinctly functional by a breaching method that knew that and correctly that nature increasingly demonstrates to humanity that we are all sickly, non-distinctly hurt too by the same thing that we could all just counter like that, but we have not, which is also brings up why and how. And that's recorded, but no one follows mandated law but as collusion slash S. Increasingly then further, this breaching method uses and has used, even without them even realizing the extent of it, names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, the interbranch names, the intelligence tied to them, foreign and domestic, with both their lawyers, their conjunctions, their family members, the same with both sides of the cases. The conjunctions to them and to that. All that is used to keep everyone putting the same sequence shifts at the same time. Self-value, other quality aspects, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions are factual nature, quality aspects in nature, also relative to where and to how, with James Madison left to classify for us to understand also with the other founders. How that's still replaced. His plan is the only correct answer. Will cause the Declaration of Independence. Will cause the Constitutional Convention. It's experts are supposed to share what they know. They're using what they know to get over on what is most properly spoken for the identity the science is shared. And the way they share an identity gives us means like with black people's whites of eyes to discern right through. To discern criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature associated with the experts on the names of the people of the sciences, to use a phrase from the Old Testament, per science law, per the Old Testament and per the Quran, the people defending it, it was written with consciousness to demonstrate, and in a way, so we should be able to demonstrate. No one allows free speech by that. The beginning of the Quran says, all that matters is if someone's going to be honest about what they're going to call that distinct identity of, I'm translating, of, the one generating how we are an individual species body. And every species body is made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. And then there are group differences, like male, female. There are fish with two eyes. We have quality aspects in nature with the other species bodies, also made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies that are distinct but non-distinct. And we are simultaneous. Right where and how and in the way slash us that shows us we are also generated by that a further distinct identity of simultaneous nature, that which I refer to as the hyper-simultaneous. And this is important because people prevent short words of others, regarding World Trade Center predicate acts. There were only three branches of government, and their difference is a certain type of victim / hyper victim that is attacked, specifically to employ, just like black was attacked. And there were black and white collusions with doing it to keep themselves screened increasingly. Because nature is increasingly showing us, it has been, one of the things that all those crazy laws against all the women differences, Native American, colonists, this colonist, that colony, that, in other words, this country involved this international company, all those things are true, but a hyperforeign only allowed it to unfold that way by getting other things, others ourselves blamed for what it caused. Because it realized that only locations, areas, and states' names could operate the phenomenon of the names of countries in this system that is the species body of individual body systems that as the one that's generating all group differences. Otherwise, it demonstrates we're using a system or systems other than its own, when its own is also positive onto itself. And it demonstrates with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. But they are also contained in our substance as means to cause hyper positives out of negatives, to reveal evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere. Some ways, especially differentially regarding how we are quality is fact-cheating nature. You see, but we have this sabotaged, just as we have had sabotaged the relativity of how the suburbs were designed tactically to nature. But they have changed what our founders had declassified for us to have communicated about that. Suburbs. Anyone who tries to pretend that cities aren't tactically denatured relative to this, they'll have inherent to, active to, and progressive to their logic, their nature of logic. Demonstration / us of the same, if they try to debate. There was slavery forced before America's roles, therefore, before America's founders were born, North and South. That is not clear because our campuses A through Z have been stayed, not just in America, but as countries A through Z. They have been stayed hyper-criminally foreign influenced. And nature has been demonstrating that. And this breaching method showed the branches of government, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, at the same time originally and still. They have to hide even their differences of guilt, collusions with itself. Relative to instances, it means we're only formally we are capable of perceiving, of discerning to defend from and to overcome the hyperforeign breaching method. The predicate acts with facts, but I'm not even a lawyer. It's a predicate acts with facts method. That which we assign what nature communicates and how it communicates with black people's whites of eye. Which is also nature itself shows us that sometimes some things that will only be and stay natural value as criminal insidiousness nature. It is not its complete identity of relationship to itself, which is also positive unto itself as each self. Or we discern. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling were revealed. There are proofs. It is more probable, practical, and demonstrable that they were revealed in ancient times, that which we refer to now too as semi-ancient, and then in semi-ancient times, that which we refer to now as ancient. But in semi-ancient times, they became criminally foreign influence. Tactically, delusions wrought. And I'm referring to it as semi-ancient because nature shows us to understand these as three identities, as three parts of its complete identity. For example, these three parts of time. the past, which is gone but still increasing value. The active, to the extent you can discern of that which is active or grouped. Differences, no. The way it uses differences, though, or demonstrates that we're using systems other than its own. And the active as the portion that we beyond us, and that will stay beyond us, except for one way, where it's complete identity relationship to itself, and the value of that only increasingly positive onto it as itself here too, or it's forced away from here. So we can make exceptions for it. We could ignore its system, and we could all agree to self-value rules with it. Basically, as the breaching method made everyone. Self-value rules pretending they have free speech to an extent, while they know they don't. Otherwise censoring anybody who brings it up, including if that body is a majority of people, including if it is everyone black pupils and it is adapted to. So we have to understand what our founders left to classify for us to understand about the breaching method that was entrenched. We have to understand the design of the homes. We have to understand the plight of the farmers. But we have to understand simultaneously the plight of ourselves, millions of people, where even the suburbs are tactically denatured, reliant upon food and resources from other locations on a mass scale. And no one ever, and the breaching method with slavery, North and South forced, and forced right through our founders, You don't vote on slavery. Our founders would have said that, but they would have been censored. So they declassified it. They communicated it, which also they demonstrated. The identity of communications is simultaneously greater than and more finite than, and with active relativity to what is said better than it. And that's important too, because of where and how. Everyone was taught to think and defend your logic, your natures of logic, replacing James Madison's plan, for example, as the only correct answer for what caused the Declaration of Independence, for what caused the Constitutional Convention, and for what caused the Civil War. We lost on many fronts in the American Revolution, and every modern nation lost on many fronts. And the breaching method caused that by first doing bad things and making others themselves blame for it by the people who only know how to respond that way. And then, because they didn't understand it. And then the people that also didn't understand it, people who got blamed wrongly, they countered that. Now they're also leaving out what started this. And little did they realize, more and more while they're defending defenses of themselves that are righteous, they were self-valuing more and more themselves to positions and as natures more and more incapable of affording to be, let alone to protract. Short words appreciated even in the bodies of others. More and more people are incapable of affording discern proper scientific appreciation of this ancient republic for which we stand. Abridged through our very campuses for self-value tricks, hurt and persuaded to self-value rules. For good reasons. In other words, we understood that. In other words, they mess up. It's complicated, but where it's complicated and simple, it's not going to seem complicated anymore because that's what it's about. No one had free speech. And then James Madison became our founders too. But so we have the experts on logic and reason that have a whole bunch of different countries and they have badges and they have value their titles. They can't defend. And, tactically delusions raw, where they have collusion / that's replacing what is declassify what is proper for description of the value of the words and of the evidences recorded at the time. We know that the databases were criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, only allowed to be arrays of opinions, all as collusion / s blaming other things, others themselves. For things the breaching method caused, until those things they were blaming were correctly to be blamed. In other words, now one has trained. So we have means out of nowhere. In other words, the whole country would help not, them first. For example, if they have it the worst, it's Michigan with lead in the pipes. See, the whole world is forcing the leaders to entertain economics and play the number to play us as a business. And see, that business was never stopped being collusion / s. Where the differences of guilt of the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the countries themselves divided into the international companies from those countries, the private industries relying upon things. The breaching method hid behind and through that with those crazy, even slavery, torture, extortion method, murder method, entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies, more than 13. And then America's founders were born behind James Madison and his plan, that which caused everything. Boxing. So it's important too, because this is World Trade Center attack collusions that from interstates that Wethersfield police have and have had. Also with their sources, they put fake transcripts. They change, fake, hide, and obfuscate what actually was and is digitally recorded, including with the FBI, whiting forensics, and their roles with the same house / s involved with organized crimes, plural, and proven child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart. Families' roles with those other natures of organized crimes. Used effectively to keep all names, all sides of cases, the interbranch, the intelligence, the news at the same time, names next to tied body double spots, even when they're not in the same cases. At the same time, putting the same sequence shifts. They keep the whole career as criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. In other words, but you guys don't let a lot of people get them on paper first because they know this is recorded. In other words, all along Route 3, there's a Delafair family involved with some probate court judges. Probate courts have roles with elderly homes where people are locked in there, and they just do a quick trial relative to the roles with drugs and medicines and other means of resolving issues, and their roles with the prisons, and their family members are with other branches of the government and agencies, foreign and domestic. Other countries in the news have collusion / s with people from Wethersfield involved with falsified police reports and fake transcripts in the databases, fake ties to all ages and natures of little kids on and off campuses that Wethersfield police have collusions with. Intercities too. A bunch of people in the written Superior Court have Eric Mendez and have others involved with them with sexual medical offenders of kids, including legal ones, with judges, prosecutors, their family members, victims, advocates involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. Their roles with the buildings next to the state capitol. There are proofs that this is interstates because of what I recorded them doing with the campuses and how they're using wire crime maxim methods and just changing and faking what's actually recorded. And they're making people call back a bunch of times and changing and faking, hiding, obfuscating what's actually recorded there. And lying about their motivations. Oh, pretend we should go to the courts. The courts have collusions that they don't want. They're forced to self-value. We can't leave out the roles of former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, involved with a bunch of people from the Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and the District Court before and after the World Trade Center attack. And then with a 2006 district court case with former director of the FBI, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act, Robert Luskin, and with his co-defendants and with their family members, increasingly involved with organized crime acts and methods at campuses of all ages and natures, increasingly their collusions with mayors too, even senators, and their family members, conjunctions to them. This keeps everyone collusions, including further on up the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices and the corrections offices. These same names increasingly time collusions with use/s of body dumping spots and of names next to them, and conjunctive with it, years apart too. Ugh. So please, Judge Napolitano, get the Wethersfield police in the courts, the Hartford courts, and the Brit Superior Court on paper, one name in sequence. They have foreign and domestic military involved. Since I was a kid, intelligence families from the Britain Superior Court, from the Britain Central Connecticut State University, but also people from the Britain Superior Court. They have collusions all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices, involved with organized crimes and organized crime methods at and next to the campuses, including with the networks, planting evidences, planting collusions with use/s of names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and the interbranch and intelligence tied to them, self-valuing the same sequence shifts, self-valuing the same collusion/s with criminally foreign influence, factory nature, quality/qualities, aspects/aspects, in nature/natures, like wrongdoers, wrongdoing itself, predicate acts themselves, methods of them. I'm not a lawyer. It's recorded how lawyers have roles with this, and how they have been worse than criminally incompetent toward the names of the people of the sciences. Beginning of the Old Testament also has a part up front that says, only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. And that's before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And I've never heard it. Only the part that says, only defend right here. For example, people have to believe in that. And that's not even something to believe in. So I don't believe in it. I just say I believe that it's written with consciousness. I understand what it's saying. It's written with conscience. They knew that the people defending the religions as the difference, while defending their differences, there would be a collusion/s with use of location/s. Every name, every difference by the breaching method, self-valued. Otherwise, self-valued rules sensing for the breaching method. The same thing with the Quran was written with a part up front that knew the people defending the religion, their own differences with it, and the people attacking them, and exceptions would be collusion/s. That's why it says at the beginning of the Quran, all that matters is if someone's honest about the scientific value of that distinct identity of simultaneous nature. For example, this is what I think it means. A better way to say it than the English translation I heard. We are a species body of individual bodies. And there are totally different species bodies of a whole bunch of individual bodies. But they all also have quality aspects in nature, like male, female, two eyes, consciousness, even the bugs. In other words, and it is generating all group differences, or demonstrates that we are using systems abridged. Nature's identity. So it says all that matters is someone's honest about are they going to call that name of that as a scientific value, Allah or not. And it says to love, who doesn't call it that? And it does say to kill, who doesn't? See, that's why they don't have the part of the reason that people get away. with preventing the guides that are right at the beginning of religious books from being valued. And then while by people collusions with it, with you/us of it, who are pretending experts on things. Or you're not a priest, or you're not a rabbi, or you're not a imam. It even qualifies the individual. It says that's all that matters. It even obligates them not to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason. We have black people as whites of eyes. To know that both black and white are slandered by a hyperforeign breaching method. The only reason this appears to be debatable is because our campuses have stayed sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, criminally born influence, tactically delusions raw. There was an order to it. And that's the nature of the order. The nature of collusions is all that has been speaking about order since. Nature teaches best about order. There are these 5 identities of order with the parts of itself. Come with that part of itself, that that individual, distinct identity of value of simultaneous nature, generating all the different species bodies again, as a distinct individual identity of value progression that is also non-distinct from everything. It is surging through all things and even through the force, while not as force. But while is that anyway, so we can discern it anyway. Greater than and more finite than all things. Well, as them too. It has them value here its way, or has them forced for using systems other. In other words, so please follow mandated law. Wethersfield police have foreign and domestic military involved with them, with fake transcripts with me and fake ties to me as a kid, now as an adult, fake motivations for it too. Increasingly, there are roles of predicate acts with facts methods recorded. It's important to get them into branch on paper, one name and sequence. Before the World Trade Center attack, Connecticut interbranch families and foreign ones have collusions at West Hartford locations, and which is next to Central Connecticut State University, with people involved on all sides of my house from other areas, intercities at other campuses too. Through time involved planting, what we're going to observe was involved with the World Trade Center attack. But you guys have to follow mandated law. Get me off a conversation with WFSB about this. They have a whole bunch of people tied to Gail King and Central Connecticut State University, involved with them too, with the WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others. And there are intelligence next to them, next to the other networks too, who are connected with the ones next to them. And their roles with a victim's advocate with various natures of organized crimes, uses of people involved with victims that are sequence shifting. And they hate a lot of things involved with that and are still involved with that increasingly. Plus the interbranch forges and switches names, increasingly collusion / that's at all natures of crime scenes. Please, Judge Napolitano, do what's right for the president still. Please, President, someone communicate with me. I was next to the World Trade Center the morning of the attack in Manhattan, New York. And the night before, I was in a hotel next to the World Trade Center. And those are people, all sides, and people from Saudi Arabia and America had a hyper-foreign side involved too, with the names, like a Scalora family is increasingly involved, with Wethersfield police involved with organized crimes on my street, and confessions. They're switching and forging names also with other departments and other courts. They're refusing to get on paper since I was a kid, legitimately. And with the news at the same time, and names next to body dumping spots, untimely death rolls, Increasingly, Harvard Hospital has roles of all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and countries in the subjects of Judge Napolitano, where we can answer those questions. But you guys have to follow mandated law for Fox News, too. They're hiding and changing evidences, also with forensics names associated with Whiting Forensics, and a Bob Chase with a Phil Colo, further involved with organized crimes on my street, and with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me and others. Other natures of organized crimes and child abusers he has roles with, including sexual and medical offenders of kids. And as per them, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Whiting Forensics, too, with the Bob Chase and this Mendez police, that fake conversation with me, too. So they're communicating things that they're non-verbally, that they're pretending they're not communicating, not just demonstrating. There are verbal communications, non-verbal communications, and there's a couplement of them, and demonstrations of collusion. Time, prepare each mind.